Mm. Dear friends, dear family, those that are near, those that are far, what a very precious chut this is for me. This is a very beautiful privilege that I feel in my life to have the honor to commemorate this very special day, this being the fifth Yarzeit of Ahava and Emuna Lange. 5 years, nachon. Ahava and Emuna bat Reb Moshe Zal. I wanted to open up first by just giving all my love in the name of all of us to the Lange and Grogan family. We're a family forever. This is it. We're in this forever till the great day. May it be as we're learning right now. May it just be now. May it just be now. I want to open up by singing a nigun for the shmirah, for the love, for the protection of Am Yisrael wherever they are. And I'm sure that it's something that Ahava and Emuna would also love us to have to start with. So please sing with me wherever you are. Shomer, Shomer Yisrael. Shomer, Shomer Yisrael. Shemor Sherit Yisrael. Shemor Sherit Yisrael. Ve'al Yovad, Ve'al Yovad, Ve'al Yovad, Yisrael, Haomrim Shema Yisrael. Shomer, Shomer Yisrael. Shomer, Shomer Yisrael. Shemor Sherit Yisrael. Shemor Sherit Yisrael. Ve'al Yovad, Ve'al Yovad, Ve'al Yovad Yisrael. Haomrim Shema Yisrael. Ve'al Yovad, Ve'al Yovad, Ve'al Yovad Yisrael, Haomrim Shema Yisrael. Well, as we've titled this evening's learning, this evening's shmooze, this evening's heart to heart, Ahava and Emuna, more than ever. It seems to me that we could just show up right now and say, okay, Chevra, the only thing we need to do right now, and the most important thing in the world, is to emulate Ahava Emunah, to remember, I'm sure we all do, to be very in tune and in touch with that magical legacy that seems to become brighter and more important, more than ever. And that would really be enough. I think that'd be enough. I just going to spend a few minutes trying to understand what it means to live with her name, what it means to live with her legacy, what it means in the very historic moments we're living in, what it means to live with more love, and what does it mean to live with more faith, and what does it mean to live with her midot within us now more than ever. Now, it doesn't always come out like this year, the Yarzeit. The Yarzeit this year shows up right as we say goodbye to Shabbat Chazon that we just had right now, the Shabbos of vision. The Shabbos where our sages teach us, it's called Shabbat Chazon, the Shabbos of vision, named after the first word in the Haftarah, Chazon Yishayahu ben Amos, the vision of prophet Isaiah. Well, that's a very heavy and that's a very intense prophecy. The Hasidic masters took this to a place where, especially Reb Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev, where he explained that on Shabbos Chazon, each person is given a vision of what the third Beit HaMikdash looks like. We have a lot to say on that, but that's not for now. But because the Yarzeit this year is basically the Melava Malka of Shabbat Chazon, it seems it'd be an opportune time to speak for a second, if I can even have the chutzpah of speaking like this, but what was her vision? What was Ahava Emunah's vision? We've learned this many times, but I think it's important to say it right now. We're waiting for Mashiach. I don't think there's ever been a time in our lives where we've been more in tune with the need of living in a messianic world, of banishing sheker, banishing lies, banishing hatred, banishing evil from within over here, within the land, and within the whole world. But a person could succumb and fall into a very deep, depressive state of being when they see how far it is, how far we are from that happening on a major scale. And therefore, we always say, as is one of the 13 principles of the Rambam, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shlema beviat HaMashiach. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah, va'af al pi she'it mamea, and even though it may take its time, im kol zeh, nonetheless, achake lo b'chol yom she'yavo. I will continue to wait for Mashiach for any day that he may come. Up until, let's say, the 6 million, maybe it was enough to just wait and hope and pray that it happens. Obviously, right now, that's when no one's sitting around waiting. We've all, the nation, led by our heroic chayalim and chayalot, has risen and are acting in a manner that's not just waiting for Mashiach to come, but doing a lot to pave the way, clear the grounds, purify the air for Mashiach to come. But then the individual can show up and say, well, who am I? What am I doing in this world? I'm not a soldier. I'm not on the front lines. I'm definitely not me, but I'm speaking the name of any of us. I'm not a political figure. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not a teacher. I'm not on the front lines. What could I do? And let's go back to Ahava and Emuna's vision. In Hebrew, it happens quite often that letters sound the same. For instance, like a tet and a taf, a vav and a vet. That's why sometimes we change around the letters and they mean different words. And in the word, there's another one of these this interesting phenomenon. And that is where kaf and kuf are interchangeable. In Hebrew, we say lechakot means to wait, but lechakot with a kuf means to emulate. Lechakototo, to be like that, whatever it is you're imitating. And the beautiful teaching is that today, what we have to do today, what must be the avodah, the work of today, it has to be that we have to lechakot oto, not to wait for Mashiach, but to imitate, to emulate, and to act as if whatever I envision Mashiach to be like that. So v'afal pi sheit mameh, Ribbono shel olam, you're waiting. As long as it's not coming, it's not coming. V'afal pi sheit mameh, im kol zeh achake lo. I'm still waiting. I'm not stopping. I'm waiting in a different way, though. I'm becoming a shtickle, a little Mashiach. From the very, very precious moments that I had the privilege of spending with her, Alea Shalom, I was in the presence of someone that lived that vision of achakelo. I am going to imitate. I'm going to live like a Mashiach figure. That's the avoda of today. I spent this week. It's interesting. I feel a little bit guilty saying this, but it's just the way that it works, and we're all family here, and you know what I mean. And during the 3 weeks and the 9 days, I actually have time, as I'm off from a lot of different things. I actually have time to do things that I don't get the chance to do as much anymore. And one of them is spending time in the studio. And I have a lot of different projects that I'm working on right now. About 3 different projects, musical projects that 2 of them I'm trying to wrap up, and one I'm trying to start. But one of them is an album with a collaboration with many different musicians. It's a project for a certain shul that I'm very close to and a certain rabbi that I'm very close to. So this week, a very special, beautiful neshama. He's visiting from New York. Hopefully he'll be visiting New York as he will join us here in Eretz Yisrael. But he's a beautiful guy. He's a young guy. He's awesome. His energy is really awesome. His name is Joey Newcomb. if you know, thank you Hashem or Mi Ka'amcha Yisrael. So he came into the studio this week to work on some stuff, and we spent the day together. And he has a funny thing. He has a lot of funny things about him. One of the things he always says is, "No, what's the avodah? What's the avodah? What's the avodah?" He called me before Shabbos last week. He said, "I'm in Beit Shemesh for Shabbos. What's the avodah of Beit Shemesh?" He says everything has to have an avodah, avodah. Everything has to have this. There's a service of God. There's an actual living process happening at every moment in our life that we're trying to make the most of. What's the avodah? It's just funny the way he says it. So we're saying, no, what's the avodah? What's the avodah of today? What's the avodah of today? The avodah of today is to try to understand how to emulate. How do I be like this? When everything seems so impossible, how do I make things seem possible? How do I become a beacon of Ahava and of Emunah? And here we go back to this Shabbos that we're coming out of right now, Shabbat Chazon. He's noticed something very interesting about Moshe Rabeinu, as Moshe Rabeinu is beginning a 37-day speech, which begins, the Torah tells us this Shabbos, he begins sharing it on Rosh Chodesh Shvat, right, in the 40th year of Am Yisrael in the desert, and he ends on Zayin Adar, the day that he passes away. That's 37 days. 37 is also the numerical value, the gematria of the word halev, the heart. He's giving over his heart. But what's fascinating about Moshe Rabeinu, which is Sefer Dvarim, is basically his farewell address to Am Yisrael. And he's overlooking Eretz Yisrael. He's never going to go in there. Remember, like what we just said, it's about like a month before he dies. And Moshe Rabbeinu is looking back at all the miracles and all the hardships that the Am Yisrael had to go through. And he's recapping all these different laws. Some are chidushim, some we haven't actually heard of. And some he's, going over it again. But what's amazing, though, is that when we first met Moshe Rabeinu, we met him at Parshat Shmot. And what we saw was a timid man trying to basically, what's the right word, to squirm out of his heavenly avodah, right? Hashem appears to him at the burning bush, and he says to him, you're the leader, you're going to lead, And Moshe Rabeinu says, Lo ish dvarim anochi. I'm not a man of words. Okay, I'm not a man of words. And we have a lot of different perushim on that, but the main one is that Moshe Rabeinu had a speech impediment. And for him, it would seem that it would be a very, very difficult task to be the leader. A leader has to be articulate. A leader has to be a demagogue. A leader has to be one who can control the manner in which the words that they say end up coming out. And of course, also to control their mouths from not saying certain things. That's a leader, right? So we open up by meeting Moshe Rabeinu saying, that's not my avodah, right? Moshe Rabeinu says, it's not my avodah. I'm not a man of words. And then what do we have now? Ending his life, these are the words that Moshe Rabeinu is now going to give the longest speech you ever heard of. What is the Torah telling us? Like, how could it be? How could it be that we have such an insecure young man that we meet in the beginning, and he becomes mamish the mouthpiece of God on earth? And I think that what we have to remember, and it's true for us as well, is that there's many things in our lives that in the beginning, when we face them, we say to ourselves, there's no way I could ever go through this. If you're telling me this is what I have to go through, there's no way. You got the wrong person. I cannot become. I can't. I don't have enough love in my heart, and I definitely don't have enough faith. I cannot. I won't be. I would never be able to get through such trials and tribulations if this is what's destined for me. And then we look back and we're like, years later, and we're like, wow. What I thought was impossible actually became possible. Basically, throughout all of Moshe Rabbeinu's ups and downs of being a leader in Am Yisrael, the one thing he always remained committed to was to be in a relationship with God, no matter what was happening. Like from the moment that Ahava and Emuna found out about her illness to the second that she returned her soul to her Creator. being in a relationship with the Ribono Shel Olam is the key to develop more love and more faith. So throughout whatever Moshe Rabeinu was going through, he always stayed in an active relationship with God, not a stale one, not one of a checklist Judaism. It was real. There was a deep sense of wanting more, of trying to seek more. And it's very amazing how throughout our own lives, each of us experiences, stretches of faith where, especially this year, we feel very dark periods of doubt. We're sure the Ribono Shel Olam is done with us. But at the end of his life, Moshe Rabeinu says, Eile hadvarim, these are the words, you got to keep on talking. I'm reminded of a very special moment that I had with Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, the chief rabbi of Efrat here. Hashem should give him refuah shlema. He should continue to have a lot of nachas from everything that he's built and all of his students and institutions. So this story goes back about 17 years, more, maybe 18 years ago. I was a student here in Amiftar learning for Smicha, Yeshivat Amiftar here in Efrat, learning for Smicha under Rabbi Bravender and Rabbi Riskin. And it was a very troubling time in life. The whole parsha I was going through, without getting too involved in details, like all of us have these moments. And I wasn't able to learn. I wasn't coming up to the Beis Midrash for a few days, maybe even longer. I don't remember. But word got to Rabbi Riskin that I was having a very hard time. And on Wednesday nights, Rabbi Riskin would come and give shiur in the shul. He'd give a parsha shiur, and he always had a driver waiting for him. And the driver dropped him off and always came back just in time to pick him up and bring him back home. Wednesday morning, Rabbi Riskin called me and said, Shlomo, I'm coming to give shiur tonight, and I want you to drive me home if that's okay. So obviously I understood that he knew that I was going to do something. And of course I'd come up, I came to the shiur, and then after the shiur, I drove him home, and he asked me to come inside to his house. And we sat down in his living room, and he told me the following story. I hope I remember the details. It's not a long story, but it's just a very important story. He said to me that in the early 70s, or maybe it was mid 70s, he was invited to be scholar in residence somewhere in Europe. I believe it was Munich, but I don't remember for sure. And he said that he got to the shul Shabbos morning, place is packed, and people are wearing talitot, and women are there too, but everything is happening besides one thing, davening. And it was the strangest thing. And even when the rabbi, when he was called, the only time they didn't talk was when they called him to give the sermon, and he went up and spoke, and then they were listening to him. But then the second his sermon was finished, they went back to just talking, schmoozing. No one was davening. And Rabbi Riskin was very confused. He didn't understand what was going on. And at lunch at the house of the president of the shul, Rabbi Riskin went up to the president of the shul and took him aside before they started the meal. And he said, I just have to ask you a question. Is it something about me? Is it something I said or didn't say? Like, president said, what do you mean? He's like, I just don't understand. Why there's no one here? I've never seen such a thing before. How could it be? Like, how does this work? No one here, this is a shul, it's a house of God. No one here was talking to God. Everyone was just schmoozing. So the president of the shul looked in Rabbi Riskin's eyes and said, listen, remember, this is mid-70s, and whoever was there was someone that went through World War II and probably lost everything and everyone. The president told Rabbi Riskin, he said, these are all people, they can't not come to shul because they're Yidden, they're Jews. It's just what they do. But after what they saw, they can't talk to God. They're here, but they can't talk to God. So Rabbi Riskin then told me, he said, Shlomo, as hard as whatever you're going through is, he wasn't belittling it. He said, you could still talk to God. Just make sure you still keep the conversation going with Hashem. Even if right now a better day, a brighter future seems impossible, the one thing you have to do is to keep on being in conversation with God. And I get the chills thinking about that story, because that really is the story of so many of us in the time of life we're finding ourselves in. How is it possible? Where are we to get strength from? How do we remain loving, believing people? Anshe Ahava Emuna. By one thing, keeping the conversation going. So much so, like Moshe Rabeinu, that begins as being someone who's, some say he was a shtickle, chalila, mute, some say the speech impediment, whatever it is you're going to say, he didn't stop talking until the end of his life is the longest farewell speech anyone's ever heard, because he never stopped talking to God. I have a friend that told me one time during that same period of life, he said that he gave me an eights, he gave me a piece of advice. He said, when you wake up in the morning, make sure the first thing you see when you wake up from your bed, the view is, put a big picture, put up a big banner and write on it, God can wait. I said, what does that mean? I said, God, he said, for us to understand what that means, I hope I give this over right. What he meant to say was, sometimes we think that until I've fixed everything I need to fix, then God's ready for me. But he said that's a very much a paralyzing a way of thinking. He said the truth is that the most important thing you have to remember is that there'll be times where you know you haven't come close to who you'd like to be or where you think you should be. But God can wait, meaning just be where you are right now. And God can wait for you to figure everything out, but don't stop talking. Don't stop the relationship. And if right now you really feel that this idea of Mashiach, literally of a messenger coming and redeeming the whole world and leading the whole world back to Yerushalayim Yer Kodesh and bringing peace and prosperity throughout the universe, be that person. Whatever that means to you. No one's giving, there are no laws here. Don't proclaim yourself be a Messiah. But in your heart, proclaim yourself to be a Mashiach Chassid. A Mashiach Chassid. Because the more that we act like that, the more that all the impossibilities begin to become possibilities. Looking at the world like this is the only avodah we have right now. That's the avodah, that's the visionary work we so desperately need to be tuned into in today's day and age. And when we look around, we actually do have some of these figures in our midst in the times that we're living in. And I'm sure that if Ahava and Emuna was around with us right now physically, she'd be not only leading the way, but she'd become best friends with certain figures that have basically just, if we allow our hearts to be open enough, we take them in and realize, wow, they're showing us what the avoda is today, whether it's Miriam Peretz, whether it's Racheli Frankel, whether it's Jen Early, whether it's, there's so many powerful people and very much powerful women. Well, one of the women that has shown us that you got to be a chakelo type of Jew, the way that we're explaining it, is a very it's a very sad story, but it's one of mamash, the Jewish people in its full glory. And I'm talking about a woman named Orit Mark Ettinger. So I'm not sure if you know who she is, but Orit Mark is a young woman. And I'll give you a little bit of a background about her. She grew up in Otniel. Her father was a dear friend of mine. His name was Rabbi Mickey Mark. He was killed in a pigua. I don't remember how many years ago it was. I think it was like 8 or 9 years ago. Her father, Mickey Mark, was killed in a pigua on an Erev Shabbos. And her brother, Shlomi, was working for the Mossad. He was killed in 2019. And in the beginning of this war, the first day, her cousin Elchanan Kalmanzon from Otniel was also killed. And a few weeks later, her brother, another brother of hers, B'daya Mark, was killed, who fell in the Ason of the Namer, of the tank. And that's 4 very tragic, painful losses in her life. I think it was last week or the week before, she was invited to speak at some kind of event of Achdut, of hope, of love, in Kikar Chatufim in Hostage Square in Tel Aviv. And she said a few things here that I wanted to share with you that will help us be faithful to Ahava and Emuna's vision of living a life of Ahava and Emuna more than ever. She said at this event, and I'm going to read a little bit from, I have it in front of me, I just found it to be so deep and so to the point. She said that tonight I don't want to talk about the present or the past, I want to talk about the future, about what the history of our children's and grandchildren's books will look like. And this is how we're going to appear in the history books. And this is what we have to hold on to right now. She said like this: in those days, when all the countries tried to harm the state of Israel, from Lebanon, Gaza, Iraq, Yemen, Iran, they found a strong and united nation in front of them. And this was their surprise, because in the media, they heard something completely opposite. But they found a people who would not allow any controversy to undermine them. There were indeed many heated discussions between families of abductees and bereaved families, and between right and left, and between religious and secular, but everyone's conclusion was clear. We will stand together, united against the enemy. We will leave all the disputes for later, knowing that the enemy in front of us has no chance. And so it was. Months of hard and shaky struggles, when all the groups worked together, families of the fallen, families of the Chatufim, kibbutzniks and settlers, bnei yeshiva together with atheists, together, because there was one goal before their eyes: to win. See, this word nitzachon, we all know, it's a word we keep on using these days, to win. Ada nitzachon, till the win. But history has shown us, and we're living in it right now, that to only win militarily obviously is not the story of our people, even though that's a necessity right now. But we know that the recipe for a military win, until the complete win, is when we basically remember that as much as social media is very much the painter and the sculpture of the way we think these days, it's one of the greatest jokes in the world, because really, deep down inside, our history books will show us differently. The Am is ready to be attached to more and more people who simply love and who simply have faith. And when we say faith, I just want to reiterate a very important point. Faith does not just mean that I believe in God. Noach was like that. Noach just believed in God, but he did not believe that God believes in him. We come from Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu believed that God believed in him. You know, to open our hearts just one step further with the notion of love and faith. We said this over this last year on Purim, but I think it's even more shaykh to right now. When a person struggles and goes through big tests after suffering such pain, like we just heard from Orit Mark Ettinger, I can ask God why, but no one's ever asked why and gotten an answer. Or even if they get an answer, it's not an answer that they want, that makes them feel better. But in Hebrew, we don't say lama, we say lema. For what? Like it says in Tehillim, Keli, Keli, lama azavtani. God, why did you leave me? Reb Shamshon Raphael Hirsch and other tzaddikim have said you really have to change the vowels there. Don't say lama. Lama, we say yomru agoyim. Let the nations of the world say lama. Lema. For what? God, if my heart is open with love and with believing in you and knowing that you believe in me, and I ask you, for what am I going through all this? I know that I will reach the victory. I know it will be good. And I could already smell it. I already smell the complete victory. That's a visionary. That's a chakelu. That's the avoda of today. Just want to end with giving you a bracha, and please give me a bracha back. We should be blessed to be true visionaries. We should go back and read Ahava and Emuna's words, the emails, the texts. We all have, Baruch Hashem, many of us were privileged to have them. Don't let go of them. Every word there, every word, every text, every email, every blog. What was it called? Happy Lance? Happy, I forgot. I'm sorry right now, but anything she ever posted are the torches of bright light that we need today more than ever. Sending much love from Efrat to all of you wherever you are. And may all of us join the greatest vision of all, the vision that God planted within the creation of the world. When it says there was a spirit of God hovering over the water, Ruach Elokim merachefet al pnei hamayim, the Midrash says, what spirit of that? That was the Ruach of Melech HaMashiach, the spirit of King Messiah. Big hug to everyone.